Across deserts and jungles, through time-worn ruins and crumbling sanctuaries, the remnants of ancient stairways rise like broken sentences of a forgotten language. They lead to the skies, to empty platforms, to sacred altars long swallowed by time. But these steps, steep, narrow, deliberate, were not made merely to elevate stone. They were created to elevate the soul. In the windswept sands of the ziggurat stands as one of humanity's earliest temples of ascent. Constructed over 4,000 years ago, its staircases don't merely rise, they command. Broad steps lead upward in tiers, echoing the heavens they were meant to touch. To the ancients of Mesopotamia, the gods did not descend easily. One had to approach with labor, reverence, and ritual. Far west, in the land of Kemetantian Egypt, the pyramids spoke a similar language. The step pyramid of Djoser, the oldest stone structure of its kind, was not a tomb, but a message in limestone. Its design mimicked a stairway to the stars, each layer symbolizing a level of heaven. The pharaoh, embalmed and enshrined within, was not merely buried, he was being launched into the afterlife, step by sacred step, toward the imperishable stars of Orion. In Mesoamerica, atop the dense foliage of the jungle, the pyramids of the Maya and the Aztecs rise in rigid geometries, each step carved with such intention that the entire structure became a codex of ascent. To climb them was to reenact myth, to become the gods walking back toward the heavens. The Temple of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza, with its 91 steps on each side, culminates in 365, the sacred number of the solar year. Time itself was made climbable. But these structures share more than just form. They echo a primordial idea that ascent is sacred, that rising toward the heavens is not a simple act of climbing, but a spiritual choreography. Each step carved in stone mirrored an invisible step within the soul. Angkor Wat, deep in the Cambodian rainforest, tells the same story in a different tongue. Its stairways are not just steep, they are intimidating, deliberately so. The ancient Khmer designed them to be so narrow, so vertical, that one must bow forward while climbing. To ascend was to submit, the body curved in humility, mimicking the soul's posture before the divine. It was not a temple for tourists, it was a test. In the temples of southern India, the Gopuram, those towering gateways of intricately carved gods, and Demon Sophan hid within them stairways of extreme narrowness and height. Each passage, dark and enclosing, forced the devotee inward. The ascent was never meant to be easy. It was a journey into the sacred, not a casual architectural choice. Across continents and cultures, the same motif persists. The sacred stair. Why? How did civilizations separated by oceans and centuries all reach the same conclusion that the divine dwells above and must be approached step by agonizing step? Perhaps it is because the staircase is the perfect metaphor. It is physical yet symbolic. Each rise is a challenge, each step a threshold. The further one climbs, the more one leaves behind. Earthly desires, doubts, ego. The body tires, the breath shortens sand, something deeper awakens. In the architecture of ascent, the ancients embedded a secret. The soul does not fly, it climbs. And temples, those sacred blueprints of the unseen world, were not just places to worship, they were maps. Maps of consciousness, of initiation, of transformation. And at the heart of these maps, always, a stairway. Not merely a way up, but a way in. To the ancients, the world was never flat. It was layered, veiled in levels of reality, stacked like the steps of a staircase, each plane more subtle than the last. Heaven and earth were not divided by distance, but by vibration. by consciousness. And the stairway, the sacred ascent, was not just a way to reach the gods. It was the symbolic bridge between what is above and what lies below. In the ancient Hermetic texts, a phrase echoes through the ages: as above, so below. This was no poetic whim, it was a key, a cipher to decode the architecture of reality. The heavens, with their invisible harmonies and perfect cycles, were mirrored in the body, in the earth, in the temple. And stairways, rising from the dust toward the divine, became a literal and symbolic thread binding these worlds together. Consider Jacob's ladder. In the dream of the biblical patriarch, he sees a stairway reaching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending upon it. But this is not a physical ladder. It is a revelation that the divine realm is accessible, traversable, and connected. In the mystical traditions that followed, Jacob's vision became a blueprint for inner ascent, the soul climbing toward union, step by sacred step. The image appears again and again in Sumerian myths, where gods descend ziggurats to meet humanity. In the Norse Yggdrasil, the world tree whose roots reach into hell and branches into Asgard. In the mystical Kabbalah, where the tree of life forms 10 Sephiroth steps, stages that the initiate must ascend to return to the source. Each system different, each staircase the same. Egyptian cosmology saw the world as layered realms, navigated by the soul after death. The Duat, the mysterious underworld, was not a place of punishment, but a passage. The deceased, guided by sacred texts and spells, would pass through gates, overcome trials, and ultimately ascend. The stairways depicted in tombs and temples weren't metaphors. They were literal instructions for the soul's vertical journey. In the East, this vertical symbolism finds resonance in the chakras' energy centers stacked along the spine, each one a rung on the inner ladder. At the base, survival. At the crown, transcendence. Kundalini, the serpent energy, lies coiled at the bottom and rises only through purification, intention, and inner work. The yogi's journey is the same as the priest ascending the temple steps, a path from matter to spirit. And in the Andes, the Incas spoke of the Pacha, a three-layered cosmos, the underworld, Ukupacha, the world of the living, Kepacha, and the upper world, Hananpacha. To move between them required initiation, ritual, sacrifice, and sometimes the climbing of literal stairways carved into mountainsides echoing a metaphysical truth in stone. The architecture of ascent is thus not about height, it is about correspondence. Every step reflects a deeper truth, that what is above is not separate from what is below it, is its reflection, its twin. The temple staircases weren't built to reach the heavens. They were built because the heavens already existed within, and the climb was the awakening of that realization. The sacred stairway is a cosmogram, a ritual diagram in stone, encoding the soul's journey back to the divine. The priests and mystics of old knew this. They saw each structure not as a monument, but as a mirror. Not just a path upward, but a path inward, each ascending step a realignment of the self to the celestial order. So when the initiates stood at the base of the temple staircase, they were not simply preparing for physical movement. They were preparing to enter the axis mundi, the cosmic pillar, the thread that holds together the worlds of men, gods, and stars. And as they climbed, the stars watched not from above, but from within. To the uninitiated, a staircase is merely a tool, a way to get from one place to another. But to the ancient mind, ascent was never casual. It was sacred. And every climb carried meaning, each step encoded with trial, discipline, and revelation. This was the path of the initiate, the sacred ascent where one did not merely walk, but transformed. Temples were not built for the masses. They were not open forums for idol worship. They were sanctums, wombs of transformation. Within them, the initiate passed not through halls, but through stages of consciousness, and always the stairway awaited. The climb was part of the rite, a test of readiness, a symbol of leaving the mundane world below and entering the realm of the divine. In the ancient mystery schools of Egypt and Greece, initiation was a death and rebirth, not symbolic actual, in the sense of ego dissolution. The candidate descended into darkness, literal caves, catacombs, or inner chambers, and emerged only after confronting the inner abyss. But before re-emergence, there was always ascent. The staircase, a return to light. A return not as a man or woman, but as something more. The Eleusinian mysteries of Greece were said to hold unspeakable truths. Those who underwent the rituals never revealed them, but they all agreed on one thing: they no longer feared death. The initiates emerged, changed, reborn, and central to the rite was the movement between realms, a metaphysical shift enacted through walking, climbing, and ritual passage. The number of steps was never random: 3, 7, 9, 12, 33. These numbers echoed through sacred architecture for a reason. Each corresponded with esoteric principles, with celestial bodies, with inner alchemical stages. In Freemasonry, the staircase becomes allegory. The initiate begins in darkness, passes through degrees, ascends the winding staircase toward the middle chamber, the place of spiritual mastery. It is no coincidence that the Masonic path contains 33 degrees mirroring the vertebrae of the human spine, through which the Kundalini rises. This pattern repeats in Kabbalistic mysticism. The Tree of Life, 10 Sephiroth, 22 paths, forms a ladder of ascent. The initiate must pass through inner gates, confronting forces both within and beyond. Each movement upward is a refinement, a shedding of illusion. The top of the tree Keter is not a place, it is union. And the climb? The climb is everything. In ancient Hindu rituals, temple steps were not just for walking, they were offerings. Devotees climbed barefoot, each footfall a prayer, a purification. The steepness was intentional. One must bow to rise, humble oneself to ascend. In some traditions, devotees ascended on their knees or prostrated at each step. The physicality of the ritual embodied the inner work, the climb was the practice. The initiatory stairway can also be found in shamanic traditions. The axis mundi, the world tree or sacred mountain, is climbed in trance. The shaman's soul leaves the body, ascending to the realm of spirits, of wisdom, of healing. And what is it that connects these worlds? A ladder, a serpent, a column of fire, always rising. In all of these traditions, ascent is inseparable from initiation. You do not climb until you are ready. You do not ascend until you have died, not physically, but symbolically. The lower self must fall away. The illusions, the identifications, the ego's mask. Only then can the feet touch the first step. Because the true stairway is not carved in stone, it is etched into the psyche. The temples gave us the map, but the journey, that must be walked alone. There is a secret encoded into the very act of movement, not the casual movement of the body through space, but sacred movement, deliberate and ritualized. The ancients knew that the outer gesture could shape the inner world, that the body could become a vessel for alchemy, that to climb, truly climb, was to initiate a transformation. Every step up the temple stair was both physical and metaphysical. With each rise, the worshiper was leaving something behind: the dust of the mundane, the weight of identity, the gravity of fear. The feet moved, but it was the soul that was being lifted. This is why sacred stairways were not easy. They were not built for convenience. They were built for reverence. Consider the impossibly steep steps of Angkor Wat, some inclining at nearly 70 degrees. To ascend them required the body to bend, to shift into a posture of submission. The message was clear: no one climbs to the gods standing tall. You must bow. You must become less to become more. In the Himalayas, pilgrims to the temples of Kedarnath or Vaishno Devi often walk for days uphill, through cold, through pain. But they do not complain. Their suffering becomes their offering. The climb is a prayer, one footfall at a time. The body struggles and the mind quiets. In that stillness, transformation begins. The architecture itself was designed to assist this shift. The staircases were narrow, requiring focus, the steps uneven, forcing awareness. High risers slowed the climb, making it meditative. Some ancient builders even tuned the dimensions of staircases to musical frequencies, believing that certain rhythms of step and breath could harmonize the spirit with the cosmos. This was not construction. This was ritual engineering. Movement became mantra. Step by step, breath by breath, the pilgrim was not just approaching a temple, they were becoming the temple. Each upward motion was a shedding of thought, of distraction, of illusion. The world below became smaller, more distant, and something ancient stirred within. This is why in so many traditions, climbing became synonymous with purification. In Tibetan Buddhism, circumambulating and ascending the steps of stupas was an act of karmic cleansing. In medieval Christianity, penitents climbed cathedral stairs on their knees, each inch a plea for grace. The pain was not the point, the humility was. The staircase became a mirror of conscience, each rise a confession. In the Sufi tradition, the dance of the whirling dervish may not involve literal stairs, but it follows the same law: physical repetition guiding spiritual awakening. The outer motion entrains the inner ascent. The divine is not only above, it is within, and the movement unlocks it. Why did the ancients make the body suffer to reach the divine? Because they understood something we have forgotten, that transformation is not comfortable. It is effortful, raw, and real. You cannot be carried to the sacred. You must walk, stumble, sweat, ascend. And in that exertion, something changes. The mind gives way. The ego quiets. The boundaries blur. At the summit, whether a physical platform or a moment of silence, within there is a stillness, a contact, a knowing. The divine does not descend. You rise to meet it. So the next time you climb a staircase, pause. Feel the ancient code beneath your feet. Remember that ascent is older than architecture. It is written in your bones. It is the path of return. Every movement upward can be sacred if you remember what you're climbing for. Stone remembers what man forgets. Across the ruins of forgotten empires, the stairways of the ancients remain not merely as relics, but as encrypted messages. Every angle, every measurement, every alignment whispers a secret. Not just to the eyes, but to the soul. The sacred staircases were never simply functional. They were codes, living blueprints of the universe, carved in silence and encoded for the initiate. The ancient builders were not mere architects. They were adepts, astronomers, mystics, and mathematicians who saw geometry as sacred language. In their minds, form was never separate from spirit. And so they built structures that spoke to the stars and sang to the soul. Staircases were not just means of ascent, they were rituals frozen in stone. Take, for example, the Temple of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza. On each equinox, shadows fall upon its steps in such a way that a serpent of light appears to slither down the northern stairway. This is not coincidence. This is astrotheology. The temple is not merely aligned to the sun, it participates in a celestial event. The steps become time itself. The climb becomes cosmic. Similar secrets lie hidden in the Great Pyramid of Giza. While it may appear smooth on the outside, inside, passageways slope upward with mathematical precision at exact angles that correspond to star positions and planetary orbits. The so-called ascending passage is not just a tunnel. It is a symbolic initiation path, rising from darkness to the king's chamber, a room tuned, it seems, to resonate at the Earth's natural frequency. Resonance, vibration, sound. The ancients knew these were not metaphors, but forces. In many temples, sound behaves strangely. Echoes concentrate, chants carry, silence deepens. The staircases often act as conduits, amplifiers of mantras, designers of acoustics. Some researchers suggest that harmonic resonance was used in rituals to induce altered states. The stairs didn't just lead upward, they vibrated with intention. Then there is sacred geometry, the divine ratios encoded in the steps themselves. The number of stairs, their rise and run, their symmetry, all carry meaning. 3 steps for the Trinity, 7 for the heavens, 9 for the spheres, 33 for the spine and its ascending serpent. These numbers were chosen with reverence. To walk them was to trace the invisible laws of creation with your body. And where modern eyes see symmetry, the ancient initiates saw symbology. The positioning of staircases within temples often mirrored constellations, solstice points, or cardinal directions. In Angkor Wat, the entire complex is aligned with Venus, the morning star known in ancient lore as both the light-bringer and the gatekeeper of transition. The question arises, how could they have known all this? How did they carve stone with such precision, align with planets, encode philosophies so profound they still confound modern minds? Some whisper of lost technologies, not machines but mental mastery, consciousness so attuned to nature's laws that stone could be shaped like clay. Others speak of sound as a tool, of frequencies that could levitate or dissolve. But perhaps the real technology was wisdom itself, a way of seeing the universe not as matter, but as mind. And temple stairways? They were the interface. Every culture that built sacred staircases also spoke of descent from the stars of wisdom gifted by sky beings, watchers, gods. Could these stairs have been more than symbolic? Could they have been landing sites not for ships but for energies, for transmissions, for consciousness far beyond our own? We may never know, but the stone knows. The ancient stairways remain, silent yet speaking, waiting not for the scholar but for the seeker, for those who don't just look but listen. Because to ascend them is to read a sentence left by a forgotten hand, a code not meant to be translated but experienced. And only those willing to climb with heart open and mind still will ever hear what the stone remembers. Sacred architecture did not vanish with the ancients. It evolved disguised beneath stone cathedrals, cloaked in Gothic arches, embedded within spiral staircases that wind toward unseen heights. The stairway once carved into ziggurats and stepped pyramids found new life in churches, mosques, and monasteries. The language changed, but the symbol remained. Across medieval Europe, spires pierced the sky like needles stitching heaven to earth. Cathedrals soared not just to honor God, but to mirror the cosmos. Within, staircases spiraled upward, narrow, confining, ascending. The design forced the pilgrim to move with focus, to wind inward as much as upward. This was not just physical motion. It was symbolic purification. The spiral staircase is perhaps the most potent symbol in post-antique sacred design. Unlike the straight stairways of Mesopotamia or Mesoamerica, Spirals evoke something deeper, the inner journey, the awakening of the self. They reflect the coiling of DNA, the rising serpent of Kundalini, the unfolding of galaxies. To walk a spiral is to journey toward center and yet rise above. These staircases were often tucked away, hidden in towers or cloisters. The initiate, now wearing the robes of monk or mason, would ascend them in silence. Each step away from the earthly floor was a shedding. Upward, through narrowing corridors and dimly lit turns, they approached the divine, not with eyes wide, but with senses sharpened. The sacred was not loud, it whispered through stone. In Islamic architecture, minarets echo the same longing. Narrow stairs climb within, leading the muezzin upward to call the faithful not just with voice, but with presence. The climb itself is a sacred act. The tower, like Babel, reaches not in arrogance, but in devotion. It is not man claiming heaven, it is man remembering it. Even in the Far East, the motif persists. Japanese pagodas, Tibetan stupas, Chinese sacred mountains all incorporate the theme of vertical movement, ascent, devotion through elevation. The more sacred the place, the higher it must be reached. This is a truth found in every culture that has ever looked to the sky and wondered. But the stairway did not remain confined to temples. It migrated subtly into the language of the occult, the esoteric, the hidden. Secret societies took up the torch of the mystery traditions, and with it, the symbol of the stair. In Freemasonry, the winding staircase is not just architectural, it is allegorical. The initiate must descend from ignorance to enlightenment, one symbolic step at a time. Even modern architecture carries the echo. Think of the lighthouse, a spiral tower guiding ships through darkness, or the skyscraper, a vertical temple of commerce and power, ascending into the clouds. Even when stripped of overt symbolism, humanity still builds upward, compelled by an ancient memory we no longer name. And then there are the stairs that appear not in stone, but in sleep. In dreams, staircases are among the most common symbols, always leading somewhere unknown. Sometimes upward, sometimes downward. Sometimes crumbling, endless, or vanishing halfway. Psychologists say this reflects the psyche's journey, the soul confronting levels of the self. But the ancients might say something different, that even in dream, the stair remembers, that your soul still walks the temple path. The language of sacred ascent did not die. It lives in towers, in dreams, in stories. It lives every time a child climbs a step and wonders what lies above. Every time someone pauses on a staircase, heart beating, caught between levels. Because the stairway is eternal. It leads not just to altars, but to awakening. And whether carved into jungle stone or hidden in the spine of a medieval abbey, its message is the same: rise. Long after temples have crumbled and the priests have vanished into dust, the stairway remains not in stone, but in sleep. Close your eyes, and it appears, winding, rising, crumbling, infinite, a staircase in the dark. It does not ask to be climbed, it calls. And the dreamer follows step by uncertain step toward a place they cannot name. Why does this image return again and again across culture, mind, and time? Because the stairway is more than architecture. It is archetype. Carl Jung wrote of archetypes as ancient patterns of the psyche, structures older than memory, living deep in the collective unconscious. Among them, the staircase stands like a monolith, a symbol of ascent, of descent, of inner transformation. In dreams, it becomes a threshold, a liminal zone, the moment between what we are and what we are becoming. Some climb toward light, others descend into shadow, but both directions are sacred. In ancient Egypt, death was not an ending. It was a journey. The duat, the underworld, was mapped as a realm the soul had to navigate: gates, guardians, rivers, and stairs. The Book of the Dead spoke in riddles, but its message was clear. The soul must rise, must pass trials, must ascend toward Ra, the solar deity, toward union with the eternal flame. Tibetan mystics offered a similar map in the Bardo Thodol, or Tibetan Book of the Dead. Here, too, the soul traverses level states of being after death. And though the language differs, the structure is the same: movement, trial, elevation. The goal is transcendence, the return to the clear light, the source. The stairway thus becomes more than a dream motif. It is the soul's memory of its journey home. Even the Abrahamic traditions carry this thread. Jacob's ladder, revealed in a dream, connects earth to heaven angels, moving up and down its rungs. It is the earliest symbol of divine communication, a living pathway between planes. In Christian mysticism, the Scala Paradisi, the ladder to paradise, was not metaphor alone. Monks meditated on its steps as inner virtues, each one drawing the soul upward through prayer, humility, and detachment. Sufi poets too wrote of climbing toward God, of each breath, each moment of surrender, as a step on the stairway of love. "I died as a mineral and became a plant," Rumi wrote. "I died as a plant and rose to animal. I died as an animal and I was man. I died as man and became an angel." Each line a rung on an unseen ladder stretching back to the divine source. And then there are the near-death experiences. From east to west, stories echo one another. A tunnel, a light, a stairway, a sensation of rising, leaving the body behind. Scientific explanations may reduce these visions to neurochemistry, but the soul seems to speak in symbols far older than synapses. Why a stairway? Why not a door, a path, a gate? Because the stair is earned. It requires effort, will, surrender. It is not instant, it is process. And this is the great truth whispered in temples and dreams alike. Transcendence is not given. It is climbed. The Greeks placed their initiates in underground chambers before allowing them to ascend into the light. The Hopi elders speak of emergence of ancestors who rose from worlds below through a reed, a spiral, a narrow passage upward. Shamanic traditions across Africa, Siberia, and the Amazon tell of journeys to the sky, often by ladder, vine, or celestial rope, always vertical, always sacred. These are not coincidences. These are fragments of a deeper memory, one that we carry not in the mind, but in the soul. So when you dream of a staircase, do not dismiss it. You are not just wandering through your own mind. You are remembering. You are walking the path of all those who came before, seekers, mystics, wanderers who heard the same silent call, who stepped upward, one trembling foot at a time, not knowing what lay above, only that they must climb. Because what lies at the top is not a place. It is a return. What if the temple was never built of stone? What if the sacred staircase, the one the ancients carved into ziggurats and pyramids, was always a mirror of something deeper, something hidden behind the veil of flesh and breath? What if the true stairway rises not before you, but within you? The greatest mystics across time whispered this secret. That man himself is the temple. That within the human body lies the full geometry of the cosmos. That the soul's path is not across desert sands or mountain roads, but through the inner sanctum of being. In the yogic traditions, the spine is seen as the axis mundi, the central pillar of light. Along it are the chakras, 7 centers of consciousness, stacked like steps of an invisible stair. The dormant energy at the base, kundalini, is the serpent, coiled and sleeping. When awakened, it ascends, step by sacred step, igniting each center until it reaches the crown, Sahasrara, the thousand-petaled lotus, the gate to the divine. This is not metaphor, this is practice, this is discipline, and the yogi is the climber. In Kabbalah, the tree of life maps the same journey, from Malkuth, the material world, upward through Yesod, Tifereth, and beyond until the soul reaches Keter, the crown, the unnameable. Each sephira is not just a concept, but a level of perception. Each path a challenge to overcome illusion. The mystic ascends not in body, but in awareness. The temple is the mind. The stairway, the soul. Hermetic traditions taught the same. The initiate did not need to leave their room to travel the worlds. Through meditation, ritual, breath, and silence, they could ascend the planes from the elemental to the planetary, from form to formlessness. As above, so below was never just a cosmic law. It was a reflection of the self. The microcosm is the macrocosm. The Sufis danced their way upward each turn of the dervish, a spiral stair into the heart. In the stillness behind movement, they heard the beloved calling. The light was not in the sky, it was inside. And to reach it, they had to dissolve ego, name, past, fear, all burned away in love's fire. The final ascent is always one of surrender. Even modern science, stumbling upon truths once cloaked in mysticism, now speaks of frequencies, energy fields, resonance. That matter is vibration. That thought shapes reality. The outer and inner are not two, they are layered reflections. The stairway between them is consciousness itself. In the Christian mystic tradition, the soul climbs toward the light not by effort alone, but by grace. And yet, grace does not descend uninvited. It is summoned by inner silence, by the stilling of the lower self. The Desert Fathers, the Hesychasts, all spoke of an inner mountain, an ascent of the heart. Their monastic cells became cathedrals, their bodies stairways of light. This is the ultimate secret, that all sacred structures were instructions, that every temple was a diagram, that the real pyramid is the self, and the climb is not away from the world, but into its heart, into your heart. There is a reason the stair appears in every culture, every myth, every dream. It is a symbol planted in the soul before birth, a seed of remembering, a path you've walked many times in other forms, other lives. And now, once again, you stand at the base of the invisible steps. You feel the silence, heavy and electric. You know the climb will cost you comfort, certainty, the smallness you've outgrown. But something stirs, a spark, a calling, because the divine does not sit atop the heavens waiting. It lives in the summit of your own being, waiting for you to rise. One breath, one step, one heartbeat closer. The stairway has always been within, and the temple is you.